So, good morning, everyone. I welcome you all for coming to yet another proposition of the semester. And with great pleasure, I would like to introduce our speaker for today, Mohammad Shahroz Alam, who have joined us recently. He holds a bachelor's in architecture and master's in Ekistics from Jamia Millia Islamia. He has worked in academia for more than 5 years and is actively involved in an architectural practice, ArchKala Architects, as a founding partner. And before joining Sushant School of Art and Architecture, he taught in several universities in India and also in Kurdistan region of Iraq. His research interest lies in vernacular and sustainable architecture. Today's his topic is space as contested domain, where he'll be talking about gender and caste spaces in Kusmi Village. And without further delay, I would now request Shahroz to please begin the presentation. Over to you. Shahroz, you can share your screen and then you can present.
Hello everyone, good morning. Am I audible?
Uh, Not very much.
Now? Am I clear now?
You're clear, but the volume is low. The sound is low. So if you can
Okay,
keep
I'll
your
be a
mic
bit
little up.
louder. Yeah, I'll be
Yeah,
louder. Is
great.
it fine now?
Thanks. Yeah.
Okay. I'll share my screen. Is it visible?
Yes.
Okay. Hello everyone, a very good morning to all of you. Thank you, Sobia, for the introduction. So, my topic for the presentation today is space as contested domain, that is gender and caste-based spaces in Kusmi Village. And this presentation is in continuation with one of my last research, that was the loss of vernacular architecture in Kusmi Village. So that is the same village. And interestingly, it was published yesterday only, and I just received an e-copy. So it was published in the book Architecture and Planning for Villages, and I contributed one of my chapters in this book. So this is just an abstract. Okay, so moving on to the presentation for today. So actually, I'll talk about the village. So there will be a brief introduction, and later on, I'll move to the case study of the village. So, as Gandhi says, the soul of India lives in its villages. And also, the villages, they are very diverse in nature, and they are as diverse as its geography, climate, and culture. And also, even in this diverse, there is some common traits that combine them together, and they are a community of people. They are interdependent with each other, and also they share a very strong social relationship. So, in these types of villages, the rural village, so the settlements, they have a sense of community, and there is common beliefs and values, and they also have the similar aspirations, and they face similar challenges. So these interconnectedness, they are getting connected with the caste, class, and gender, and there is also a lot of contradiction that happens in the villages. So these interconnectedness also lies in the economy, the social parameters, ecology, architecture, mythology, as well as in the culture. So this whole, all of these interconnectedness among these activities, this makes a village very sustainable and self-reliable. So village in India, they are closely knit together, and also they are organized in clusters based on hierarchy of the caste system. So that is my main topic for today. Also, the villages, as you know, they are most of them. They are very small in size. They have very low density, and the people they are very well accustomed to each other. They know each other. They know what their habits, and they also involved in a lot of activities, basic activities that they lend the money, they smoke hookah together, and they also take part in each other's joys and sorrows. So villages, most of the time, and before recently, so they were not the result of planning, and it was organic development there. So over the time, they grow, and they also exhibit natural sense of planning. So the people they plan as they like, and they also the part of caste and culture is also there, but it is more dependently on an individual. Another thing is that the environment there that appears seamlessly immersed with the natural environment. That is the most important aspect of the village that everybody likes. So the villages they have outdoor shared spaces, and the people from different caste, different religion, they come together and they have that shared space that acts as a recreational space. And the men, women, the old men, everyone they come together. They celebrate their festival. The childrens they play there. So and but sometimes there are disputes as well, but they try to solve those disputes in this common space. So also these human activities, the planning, and so they also that creates a spatial environment, and that environment is something that also plays a role in this presentation. So there is one researcher. Give me a minute. Okay. So there is one researcher called Puar. So she wrote a book called Space Invaders: The Race, Gender, and Bodies Out of Place. So actually, that research was based for actually urban areas, but this also relates to rural areas in a village, where she tells that there are natural occupants and space invaders in a space. Especially, she talks about the cities. So she defined space invaders are the one who interrupt normative order, which is resisted by the natural occupants using different dynamics to maintain the status quo. And that is why there is always a fight between the natural occupants and the space invaders. So these space invaders, if you categorize them, they are women and ethnic minorities. But if you talk about the villages, the woman is there, but there are no ethnic minorities most of the time. So who are? So I place instead of ethnic minorities, the people of the different castes, especially lower caste, are there. So they play a role of space invaders there, and they have to face the consequences or the fights. They always keep fighting with natural occupants to survive. So also there is changing demography these days, but still they fail to make everyone feel at home, and that is why this fight continues. So that those kind of dynamics they come into play, and there are different types of dynamics. Like they have burden of doubts, they have the burden of representation, and in doubts that these space invaders, they always have to prove themselves that they are equally intelligent with those who already live there. And also they keep on working hard and they suffer infantilization. They are also termed as a stereotype, the rookies, they also fall in terms of fallibility. They always have to, keep working. And sometimes even if there is a small mistake, so there is a very important saying that learning from mistakes is a privilege not everyone possesses, and that goes on to these space invaders. So, in terms of burden of representation, so there is always a pressure on them, and that there is a demand that they should perform their best. And these types of activities, and when you have to come into these dynamics, so most of the time the people they suffer. They suffer in terms of fallibility, disadvantages, career, psychological burden, and also they are perceived as token for the entire group. So when all these people they are living together, so there are some good things that is happening. So they have the social interactions, social networking. There are some good health outcomes, and also they have a sense of self, other, and community. So the Puar also says that whilst the glass ceiling has been cracked quite significantly with gender, for race, a concrete ceiling has just been chipped ever so slightly. So again, so when people are living together and there is a fight among the space invaders and the locals, so it always end up in the segregation. So there are different kinds of segregation. We could have caste segregation, social and economic segregation, spatial segregation. But all of these segregation at the end they come to residential or spatial segregation. That is the main division that happens on the ground. So there is another research by Vidyarthi and Singh that was conducted in 2012, and it was for metros like Delhi, Mumbai, Kolkata, Chennai, Bangalore, Hyderabad, and Ahmedabad. So they found that there is a residential segregation by caste. So that is more important than the level of segregation by socio-economic status. So this is prevalent even in the city. So you can imagine what would happen in a village. Another research that shows that caste identities continue to shape schooling decisions, educational outcomes, and the likelihood of securing jobs. Again, another by Mehta, this is a very old research, but he also points out that the segregation is very much among the two higher end and the lower class. So this is more prominent. So middle class is not so much segregated, but at the lower status and the higher status, there is a great segregation. So again, when there is a segregation, when there is a conflict, so this results in a lot of conflict, and the people they face a lot of consequences for that. So we have a lot of examples here. There is one case that is still going on from 1878. So it is in the state of Uttar Pradesh, in the city of Varanasi, where two communities are fighting for the graveyards. Again, there are farmers in Bihar who are fighting for 60 years for a plot of land. So, but there is research by Foreign Affairs which says that the total rights has decreased in India. Total rights has decreased by 6%. But again, there is very uh, you can say irony here that the caste conflict has increased by 52%. So this is something that we have to keep in mind, and we have to research and find out what is actually happening. Again, the sustainable development goals by the United Nations, they also put SDG 5 and SDG 10. So in SDG 5, they talk about gender equality, where they say that to achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls. And also in SDG 10, they talk about reduce inequalities. So now I will introduce my case study. This is an introduction of the Kusmi Village. So this village lies in Simri Bakhtiarpur. It is a district in Saharsa district in Bihar. So this village actually came into being in 16th century when there were two families. They traveled, migrated from Jaunpur in Uttar Pradesh. So that was the time of Mughal Emperor Shah Jahan. So when they came there, that place was totally forested, and they took the permission of the local rulers to settle there. And when they started settling, they called upon the laborers, workers from different villages, and this is how they came into being. So from the last 400 years, so there is a lot of development here. The people from different rural places, they came here and they started working in the fields. So the people here, the total village has been divided into three mohallas called Kusmi, Kundara Troli, and Charapati. So, and the total population right now is 2,872. Not right now, so it is uh, data that belongs to 2011 census. So it is even more right now. And the occupation of the villagers are like farming, cattle rearing, fishing, pottery, carpentry. So this village is also connected to the Simri Bakhtiarpur, that is the local railway station, by the Pakka road, and there are Kacha road and in the streets of the villages. So some have been constructed, but some still remains Kacha. So there are a lot of problems that they face, especially the annual flood by the Kosi River. As you might have heard, that Kosi River is also termed as the sorrow of Bihar. So there is an annual flood that causes a lot of the people die, sometimes their animals die, sometimes they lose their property, sometimes they have to move out. And also there is a primary school there, but still it is from the last 50 years it is still a primary. There is no there is no space or for extension of the school, so it is still primary. So this is the location I have already discussed, and you can see the river streams here in the third image. And Actually, this village, it lies all around the Kosi River. All parts of the village are surrounded by the Kosi River. There is a stream that actually comes in the monsoon, and there are other settlements that is similar to this village. They also have the same kind of hierarchy, and these all the people living here, they are all called Jaunpuris because they migrated from Jaunpur. They are still called Jaunpuris there. So these are three different mohallas, the Kunaratoli, Kusmi, and Charapati. So basically here the Kusmi that lies in the center. So this is the place of the landowners. So they are the Sunni, or you can say Sheikh Muslims. So they are the one actually who migrated here and they created this space. And others that you see, the Kunaratoli and Charapati, they are from the like the labor class who came and started working for them. So the demography, I've explained, talked something about the population. So again here, if you talk in terms of gender, so the male population is higher, and that is 47% is the female population and 53% is the male. And the language they speak here is the Mathili, Hindi, as well as Urdu. And the sex ratio is 88.3%. And again, the literacy rate is very low for female. Already here, the literacy rate is very low, that is 46%. But among them, also the female, they lags behind and they are at 32%. So again, the occupation of the village, the people they are involved in farming, cattle breeding, weaving, handicrafts, pottery, fishing, and as well as they work as laborers in the fields. So there are the women are also involved in unskilled laborers, and they are too much involved in agriculture and building construction work. And there is a lot of agricultural activity that happens because of the Kosi River. This space is very much cultivated, and it is very good for agriculture. So again, there is a caste. This is also a caste-based occupation where people of different occupation they live in their own small pockets. And like few examples are here, like Kunura community, they produce vegetables and they sell them in the local village, and also sometimes they go to nearby villages. The weavers they are involved in bamboo sticks and weavings. The Yadavs they are engaged in cattle breeding and they sell milks as well. So the Kamars are involved in carpentry, domes they clean the toilets, and the dingers are involved in the labor works. So again here if you talk in terms of working class, so the main working class is 31% and the marginal is 16%, and there are more than 9% people who are non-working. So again, caste and communities. So the most important people who live in the Kusmi village, they are the migrated Jaunpuri Muslims. So they are the one placed in the center, and there are other people belonging to different castes like Punira, Yadav, Halwai, Nai, Paswans, Sabji Frosh, Chabi, Fakir Muslims, etc. So also, I think I can escape the slide. So the planning that is based on the caste system is mainly focused on the people, the landlords who are the zamindars. So they have settled in the pockets that is more prominent, that is in the center of the village, and others, people of different castes, they have settled in different places, to a little away, or you can say adjacent to the main street. So this is some pictures of the settlements of different castes here. Like you can see how the Chabi, the Halwai, the Yadavs, how they live. And something that is very interesting here is that they do not have any open space or common space, a private common space. So they use streets as a common space where their children they come out, they play all the time. Sometimes there is they are accident prone as well. Their cattle, everything, all the activities lies on the roads. Even they spend all their time along the roadside, and sometimes the people did not even have their own dwellings. So most of the time they live in the machans. They sit there always, and they have the most important covered space that they need is for their animals and for the storage of the agricultural crops that they have. So this is how these different castes are settling here. So again, you can see in the center lies the Sheikh Muslims, and on the opposite side of the road there is an orchard and there's a graveyard in between. And if you shift away from that road and go inside the village and to the streets, then you have these different castes. So again, something very underlying here is that people belonging to upper caste, they always fall and they are settled on the main streets, and people belonging to lower caste, they shift away from the main street and they are moving away further and further. So here also, there is a new problem coming up that because this space has very little residential space, and most of these spaces are utilized as agricultural land. So during like when there is a division in the family, the new generation is coming up, so they do not have a space to make new construction. So they move on towards the east most of the time, where there is a whole lot of agricultural land, and they shift there. So this is something that is happening right now, and they are shifting and populating on agricultural land. So this is the difference between the settlement of Kusmi and the settlement of Punaratoli. So it is very apparent that Kusmi, it is like the population is very less here, and the houses they are very bigger, and also there is very less density here. But if you see in the Punaratoli, the density is very high, and they also the space is also limited for them. And if you talk in terms of a street, so these are very old pictures. Now there are Bakka roads here. But again, in the Kusmi village and others, you will see that the streets are very wide. And most of the time before, like 2 decades, even one decade before this space, the village, the streets, there were no streets because there was so much open space that people they wander everywhere. But right now, because of the new construction coming up, the new generation, they are constructing every day. So there are the streets, but still they are wider. But if you go to the Kunyada Toli and other spaces belonging to the lower caste, you see that there is a very narrow lane there. So this is the main street pattern here. The main roads that is colored black, that is in the center of the village, and then you have the grays. These are the different streets here. So most of the road, as I told you, that it was kacha, but right now it has been made Pakka, and also there are a lot of caste and political issues that come into play. So when there is a political class from higher caste, so they do all their construction works and development works in their own areas, and the same goes to the people of the lower caste. So this is a chalk that is the main central attraction of the village. So this is the place that is mainly for social gathering, political discourse, and there is also there are some shops, primary school, and the availability of public transportation here. So the chalk plays a very important role in their lives. Most of the time, people they would wake up earlier. They would come here at like 4 o'clock. The laborers they would come here. They would have a chai and then they would go to work. So all kinds of activity, the social activities that happens around the chalk here, and especially the people, the men, they invest most of the time here having political discussions, and sometimes they also talk about the issues they face in the village. So again, the housing pattern, as I told you before, that is the housing of the Jaunpuri Muslims. They are less populated and there is a less density here. But if you go to the Kundada village, so the density is very higher there. So another thing is there is a parda system, and that creates gender space. So the male and the female, they have different spaces allocated for them, and they use it as per their own needs. So the village has about 45 to 50 houses, and it is populated by Jaunpuri Muslims. So another thing that is very important to note here is that whenever there is exchange of land, so that happens only among the caste, the same caste. They will not sell their land to another caste. They can sell agricultural land, but they will never sell the residential plot to anyone else. So the zoning of public and private spaces in the village has been done according to the male and female systems. That is the further system here. So this is the hierarchy of the space that is seen here. We have public, semi-public, semi-private, and private spaces. So I'll show that with a small sketch here. This is a typical house in the Jaunpuri Muslims, where you see a very big open courtyard in the center, and there are four different living rooms on the four sides. There is a veranda, and when you see on the south side, so there is actually, if you see the cardinal direction, the what I see, I'm saying south is normally the east. That is the darwaza, because they are very, the people they like the eastern wind there. So the space has been divided into two kind of spaces, Angan and Darwaza. So Angan is the private, it is a family area mainly for female, and Darwaza is the area that is dedicated to male as well as the guests. So there is open space both in the Darwaza and in the Angan. So if you see that how these activities are involved around, so most of the activities done by male is in the Darwaza area, and for the female that is in the open courtyard. But there is also a system of pattern that how people come to this space. So for if you see the gents, they can come directly because that space is located outside Darwaza, so they do not face any problem. But for the female, because they have that further system, so the house is the entrance to the courtyard, inner courtyard is located on the two different sides, so that they do not face male there. And sometimes if they are coming from another side, so they cannot come from the front, so they have to go back to, they have to go to the back side, and from there is another entrance for them. So this is the kind of activity or the kind of segregation that is done between the male and the female according to the Parda system. But another very interesting point here is that the Parda system is not only for the Muslims. Even the non-Muslim females here, they practice Parda system. Not this veil, but they have something called, I think, Ghungat, yes. They call that Ghungat, so they always have that veil. And is another thing that is important to note here is that they most of the time that is especially for the elders of their own somebody they already know, their own relatives. But if they are outside with another man, they are working, so they do not practice this kind of further system. So if you talk about houses of Kunita Choli, so they do not have open spaces, they do not have big houses, there are very small living rooms, and the two different families, they combine together with a small courtyard. So this is what happens. This is also among the somebody who is at the very top in the society level, the caste hierarchy. But if you talk about those who are lying in the lower side, so they do not even have the courtyard or anything, they just have a small huts. And also there is another point to note here is that there are no toilets, no bathroom here, but even in here, they have the big houses. The houses are very big, more than 2 or 3,000 square meters. But again, due to division in the family, that space is getting limited nowadays. But even they have the toilets, but they do not have the bathroom. So this is another issue that the female here faces. So most of the time, the bathroom is like there is a tube well, and they have to surround that space with some kind of curtain or something whenever they take a bath. So these are the houses of Kunratoli, and you can see how the cattle and even the children, they are using the streets here. So the street is not for like transportation. Most of them, they do not have a way of transportation here. Most of the people, they go to their workplace, they go to their farmlands just by walking. But these days there are two-wheelers there. So that is why the streets are populated with these activities. They are always playing here. So the street, it plays as a social activity for them. Again, another thing is that there are no windows. If you see these houses, there are no windows here because of the privacy. And also, if there are windows, that is in the Kusmi village, that is also in earlier time that used to be very small, and they were used to be placed high. So they were another you can say the vernacular architectural concept about the climate and other thing, but this was also of concern. That is the privacy, especially for the females. So another thing here is that there are actually no boundaries that separate them. This is very interesting point. But there are some kind of imaginary things that actually separates them. There might be some kind of a tree, that might be a small fence or something that actually separates people of different castes. So at the end, I'll conclude that obviously there is a conflict, and people of lower caste, they are not allowed access to upper caste settlement. So in the earlier times, whenever the people would come to the main mohalla, that is the central mohalla of the landlords, so they would have to leave all their belongings, they have to leave their sandals as well at that tree, and then they would enter barefoot in the village. So that was the kind of practice at that time, but that has been done with now. And only so the laborers and workers, they were only allowed to enter the village, others they could not enter. Again, they had to leave their footwears. So there is this kind of activities when they happen. So it also plays a very important role for female, because they come there for the to help as a housemaid. But again, because there is a caste system, so the female, those who are the workers, say they cannot cook in this Jaunpuri Muslim community. So they only do the household work for cleaning, washing utensils, and other. So again, the female here, they always complain that, okay, we have enough, we have so much land, we have everything. But again, at the end of the day, we have to cook. So there is no option there. Again, open defecation is very common if you go to another mohallas, that in the Punjab Toli. I think I have discussed some part here, like about the development. So there is a reservation of seats for scheduled caste as well as the women. So the government of India as well as the government of Bihar, they are doing a lot of activities to uplift them. But on the ground, these things are actually not calculated, not happening in reality. What we see that even if there is like a female mukhya there, so they are not even posted, there is no picture for them. So their fathers or their husbands, they play all the roles, they just have to sign. So this is something happening uh, only on the paper, but when you go there, so the female does not play any active role in politics. So the development works done by panchayats, that is mainly done in upper caste areas only, and but that changes when there is the shift in politics. So again, the government schools are also controlled by upper caste, but people of all the castes, they come and they study there, and midday meal is also provided by the government. And but there is another problem that the people of upper caste, they don't eat there. So another thing, that there is a new kind of work that is being done by the government right now. So they are doing a lot of development for the Harijans. So there is a different kind of installation of the new electrical lines, and that is only for the BPL houses. So the Prakash and Singh in 2012, they say that the caste is one of the important factors for water access. So he had done a case study in Aliabad. So he said that low caste communities are at the rear end of the village where water supply lines are problematic. Being on the rear part of the village has made the scheduled caste population more vulnerable. And the same happened here, that the water supply was only given to the Jaunpuri Muslims, but there is no water supply in other areas. So this is the final conclusion. So the vast geographical contrast of the region and the different types of habitat that flourishes here, but there is also a difference in caste and culture, and therefore the various types of housing typologies, and that influences the folk, culture, and traditions. So the study of Kusmi Village also shows that the typical characteristics of traditional village and the ancient caste system has played a significant role in the planning of the village. And housing typology has similarity. Most of the houses have similar shape and division of horizontal and vertical spaces there. There is again a hierarchy of private, semi-private, and public space there. And as I spoke earlier, so there is no role of women in public discourse, so no social spaces as well. And social space for women is generally the ghats where they socialize for festivals like Chhat Puja that is performed at the banks of the river. And there are others like folk music and the spaces in the settlement. So there is a quote by Gandhi. He writes in Swaraj that says, "Ideal society is a classless and a casteless society, neither highs nor lows, neither millionaires nor starved, where each and every individual would be the same irrespective of his gender, caste, class, or religion." So I conclude this with this picture. So this banyan tree that acted as a visionary, or you can say an illusion, where the people of lower caste they stopped there, and there was this kind of boundary that was done by this banyan tree. But this year, only 2 or 3 months before, this banyan tree has fallen, and we hope that all these differences could eliminate. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shahroz, for the presentation, and thank you for exposing us to this region, which I think some of us might not be knowing, especially about this village. So now I'll open up the session for the audience for the discussions and questions. If we have any question, you can directly ask him, or you can also post it in the chat box. Since we can wait, but I do also have one question, Cheryl.
Okay.
You, in your study, you've spoken a lot about gender, especially women. I'm also, I would like to know, I mean, apart from women, their impact on the kind of spaces that are getting generated. The role of men, how men are in,
Yeah.
this another gender, how they impact the spatial characteristics of this village. And again, other aspect which you are referring to of the migrants.
Yeah. Okay, I would like
Have
to say here that obviously the men they enjoy their powers. So,
there been a
but another
shift
thing is that
in
the new
time when
generation
they
that we
came
have this
and
kind of
oh,
yeah, 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 yeah. So the new generation they are obviously they are contributing to this. They are coming together and they are helping women and they are trying to change that. But still there is a long way to go. Another thing about the migration, I would say that there is a shift of this thing. Before, like 20, 30 years before, people used to come and live here to work in the village. But you can say after the Green Revolution, and especially after the improvement in the transportation network, the people they are moving out of the village, especially people belonging to the lower caste, and they are going to another part of India, especially like metro cities, and a lot of people they are going to Amritsar as well for working as a laborer in the fields. So there is a lot of shift there that is happening right now.
all right. Thanks, Sharoz. Do we
Thank you.
have any other observation or comments for Sharoz?
Yeah, I can go ahead. Shiroz, it wasn't clear what sort of theoretical and research framework that you use to study your material, because you veered from ethnographic, demographic observations to historical commentary to general, uh, even empirical observations. Um, you also mentioned Guha's. Is it Guha Thakurta's work? Tapati Guha Thakurta's work that you mentioned? Or
Thakurs are there, yes, ma'am.
no, you mentioned someone who wrote. about space invaders. I didn't get catch
Yeah,
the
yeah,
name of the scholar.
yeah. She was not Thakur. Just a minute, I'll tell you.
Okay, doesn't matter. So it would have
Kumar.
been
She was
good.
Kumar. Yeah.
It would have been good to have that material, your references, your sources, your theoretical framework within which you're situating this, because Jaunpur area has been studied quite a bit since 1889. There was a big report by ASI on Jaunpur area, and of course during the British period there are gazetteers as well, which give detailed information about geographical information about the caste, about the work occupation. How do they feature? So what I found was that there was a bit of everything, but maybe you can tell us whether your objective is to investigate this area through a certain lens or through a certain framework. That was my
Yes, no,
concern.
I got that. I got that. You're totally right here. Actually, I'm still working on it, and I have to put an end to, like, I have to conclude with the main theme should be about the gender and the caste. So there are many more things that I have introduced right now, but over time I'll restrict them and put more emphasis on the gender and the caste.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do we
I
have
I had
Amrita?
one
Yeah.
observation. Yeah, I was just, I mean, continuing that discussion whether gender and caste do need to simultaneously coexist in your research. What does that mean when you take caste, which is a section which is full on its own, right? It has all the genders associated with it, and then you take gender. So, how do you kind of marry these two things?
Actually, you are totally right here, but the main motive was here to study a village. So this village is very small, and there is not a lot of disputes here that is happening, and there is not a lot of, you can say, the spatial division here. So that is why I thought that will restrict my research. So that will be a very small research. So if I take these two things, and the main idea here is not to talk about the caste or to talk about the gender. The idea is to talk about the conflicts that happens and that creates a spatial division in the villages.
Yeah, precisely. I mean, I'm questioning whether these two big entities, in fact, they are not small entities,
Yeah, yeah.
can coexist, or should they coexist? Should they be looked at through the same lens?
Obviously not. Obviously not. There
So
is a lot of
then
difference there.
yes, so these are big entities. So how do we actually say that, okay, let's discuss gender is 50% of the population, or a large part of the
Yeah,
population.
yeah.
Caste is a different entity altogether. So I don't know if you can squeeze it to saying whether it's squeezed also to say when you say gender and caste, whether it can be put on the same shelf actually.
Yeah, I'll think on it,
Yeah.
and I think the main motto for me was to study this village, the case study of this village and the conflicts here. So you are totally right. So I'll do some deep study and then conclude like where to finish. Thank you for your inputs. Thank you so much.
Do we have any other question? Robin has, okay. Yeah, Robin.
Yes, Shahroz, my observation towards this study is like I just want some information from your side. Like once you are taking two things, as Amrita ma'am said, gender and caste. But
Right.
what about if I take one gender? What about the differences as per their rights in context of the judiciary belt? Means how the people will solve their issues related with their minority within the minority. Means child, if that is women, child, if that is women, that is women. Caste plus gender plus complete all chains were disrupted. So what will be the solution so that in this 2021 era still they are in darkness, they women need to get empowered. So highlight upon that issue?
So I think obviously there are a lot of issues that comes into play, and especially when you talk about the judiciary, those things actually happen mostly on the papers. So when you actually come on the ground, so they do not actually work on them. So I'll give you another example here that there is one case going on that I quoted from Varanasi. So what actually happened there? There is a graveyard there, and the people, the Shia and the Sunni, they are fighting for that. But most of the time, Shia party, they won the case. They were won in the Supreme Court as well. But for the last 30 years and 40 years, they still didn't get that land. So there are a lot of things that come into play on the ground. So what actually is happening here, the Sunnis are saying that they have some people, their forefathers, they are buried there. So they cannot take them away. So even the Supreme Court is like, okay, what we can do. So they are asking the state government to resolve this. But the last 30 and 40 years, these things are happening. But like obviously there has to be a shift. There has to somebody has to play that role, and that is happening mostly by the education, by the social media. So the people, they are learning themselves, they are coming together, they are playing a role, they are creating a community. Like we have these I'm forgetting the term, but they like Anganwadi, or there are different kind of community activities that is happening where the females, the women, they are coming together, they are playing a role for the society. So this is happening, but again it will take a lot of time.
Okay, okay, all right.
Any other question or inputs for Shahroz? I would request Professor Vasavra if he would like to give his comments to Shahroz.
No, thank you. You know, I think this is a very complex subject. What you quoted in the end about Gandhiji is, to my mind, an utopia. And I think I'm not very clear about your intent of the study. So I will not be able to really comment on that because I don't want to somehow, suggest anything. But if I look at the title and when you say you're studying the village, what would be your, objective of such a study based on your basic discipline? Because, the kind of issues that you're trying to address are, to my mind, beyond the scope of your discipline. And that would really require an enormous amount of preparation for the other disciplines, which really control the issue that you're talking about. I have, had the opportunity of looking at these villages around Saharsa. And you mentioned, that they despise Koshi as a river. My understanding was entirely opposite. Because these communities, at least the areas that I studied, the villages that I saw, really worshipped that river. Because it was the only source of their economics. And I think the entire village community was so interdependent. And I have really not seen any kind of conflicts there. And there was a kind of belief that if the river does not flood, they will suffer. They also have this kind of a system of shifting villages, because Koshi constantly keeps on shifting the course. And every year the flood would, inundate, areas, which are either their farms or their villages, settlements. But they never mind it, because their entire system of constructing their shelters was so, dismantlable out of bamboos. And in 5 years, villages would shift to other places, where the river changes the course. The fact that this river brings tremendous amount of silt, which is the most fertile land, that it deposits, they consider this river as their mother. So I don't understand, some of these issues, which you're talking about. And I also, I saw very sort of in whatever time that I had, I really tried to read your earlier, work, which you presented. I think, you have to have comparatives, because in that sense, I think your choice is quite limited. And I don't think you can really deduce anything out of these kind of limited choices, because you're talking of a kind of culture, which is very different. So I'm quite unclear about what exactly is the purpose. And to my mind, as you're saying, I think the work is in progress. But I think you have to clarify many things before you could really present this. So, I mean, this is what I would like to mention. And I'm not sure whether that helps you. But one thing is clear, that if you're studying villages, there are many other areas, which you need to somehow document and present in order to get to the sociology of these cultures. Because I think we have to really develop a viewpoint from our discipline to get into the other areas, because that is the safest way to do. I don't think you can really start with the disciplines which are not yours to come to understanding these kind of environments. So this is what I would say. I don't know whether it helps. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I think, I'm sure all the comments and inputs that Vibhuti ma'am, Amrita ma'am, Professor Vasavra and Robin, all the comments will surely help him develop his research in the right direction. And I think if we don't have any more questions, we can conclude the session for today. Yes, I think, thank you so much. This is it for today. And we'll meet again after 2 weeks on Friday. Thank you so much for joining in. Bye-bye.
Thank you.